Hello, welcome to Tabletop Tap Room. I'm Tom, aka Gerion, your host. Pull up a bar stool, order yourself a refreshment. Today, we're going to talk about mead in your game setting. Now, I had never heard about mead until I played D&D as a kid. I understood what beer and ale and wine were, not from an experiential point of view, but I knew what they were because they were common enough in the American culture. I just never heard of mead, and so I naturally asked, and somebody just says, "Oh, it's Viking honey wine." Okay, and I probably forgot about mead for about 40 years till a couple of years ago. I was driving through a city and drove by a place, and it said Mead Works, and I thought, "Wow, people still drink mead. Who knew?" And that set me on this little bit of a path into finding out about mead and thinking about it in terms of the RPG game setting. First of all, honey wine's a bit of a misnomer. The fermenting of wine is basically determined by the fact that it's fermented from grapes and berries and fruit. And that's what classifies a wine. The fermenting of mead is the most distinguishing feature of mead is that it is most of the sugar for fermentation comes from honey. And there are cultures in this world that will actually sweeten and flavor their standard wine with honey. So those then become honey wine. But the misnomer is kind of very broad, and it's people know what you're talking about when you say honey wine. They go, "Oh, mead." Technically not correct, but it's hard to fight it. Contrary to the popular view that mead was just a Viking thing, it's actually far more widespread in history than the American perception of mead would be. And, we all have our baggage, and I'm an American with American baggage. And so I just thought of it as a Viking thing, but it's got a 7,000-year history. Archaeology has found evidence of it being used in fermentation 7,000 years ago. It's been fermented in Asia, Africa, Europe. So it's very widespread across the millennia. The most earliest reference to it in writing is in the ancient Hindu Vedic scriptures. The earliest reference to it in English is in the Epic of Beowulf, which probably contributed to the perception of it just being a Viking thing. So it's, historically speaking, it's very widespread, and it's actually permissible for you to have it more widespread and much more popular, much more common in your RPG setting. So how does it relate to your RPG setting? Understanding its history can change your concept of its place in the game setting. Suddenly, it doesn't seem so odd to make it common and widespread in the setting. Lots of people ferment it from honey, and it's very common. But just imagine if it was fermented from the honey of the giant killer bee. Now, in basic D&D, basic expert D&D, the giant killer bee's honey has a magical quality that it's healing. It will heal 1d4 hit points. Now, I know. If you just play 5th edition, you think 1d4 hit points is kind of pitiful. Yeah, but in basic expert D&D, it wasn't. The problem with 5th edition is that it's progressed to the point where the player characters are like superheroes with hundreds of hit points. So 1d4 hit points as a healing potion just doesn't cut it. It just doesn't cut it for when your perspective is just 5e. But basic D&D, particularly at the low levels, 1d4 was actually really a thing. Really a benefit. And if you killed the killer bees, you encountered them and you fought them and you killed them, you might as well go grab the honey because it's a poor man's healing potion. But imagine in the setting if, say, the wood elves are collecting this giant killer bee honey, that they're raising the bees and harvesting the honey regularly and making mead from, that mead's going to have a magical property to it that it's healing. You might even have NPCs in the setting say, oh, it'll reinvigorate you if you've been touched by a wraith or a vampire or a wight. So you could even hint at magical properties that it would maybe restore some of that power level that you've lost through fighting a wraith or a vampire or one of the other undead that has that ability to drain your levels from you. So this could become the very foundation of the magical item economy. So the most common magical item generally in most games is the potion. Game masters like to give them out. They don't unbalance the game too much because it's a one-use item. It's a consumable. Then they will, then it's scrolls and wands with charges. But the most common, probably in all games of D&D and similar games, has to be the potion. And you have to imagine that there must be, for some of these games, there must be like an army of wizards out there somewhere in the world who do nothing but brew potions just to supply all the potions consumed by all the adventurers in all the realms. It's the only thing that would make any sense. And yet that's kind of ludicrous because magic, in a lot of these worlds where magic's a little bit more low magic, wizards aren't that common. And why is that guy going to spend all his time brewing up potions just so some stupid fighter could drink it? Because where are all these potions coming from? So if we change the world setting a little bit, make mead much more common, maybe make the elves the source of magical mead with magical properties, suddenly you have all these vintners and master brewers, master vintners out there who are demonstrating the elite skill that they have in their craft by producing all of these vintages that are not really meant to drink as just to drink it, but contain the magical properties, and then they're sold and they're dispersed throughout the economy. You now have the beginnings of that magical economy, and it's much more logical because of, we're saying, well, they're harvesting the giant killer bee honey and they making mead from that. Yeah, you can get regular mead to drink. It's very common. It's very, very, very common throughout all the realms, but you got to go to the wood elves to get that really good stuff. Just imagine a mead called the Tears of the Unicorn. So the wood elves, they start with the magical honey of the giant killer bee. They find the rarest of the botanicals out there to flavor it. And maybe botanicals that actually have some sort of magical quantity. Different botanicals brings different qualities to the mead. And then somehow, we don't know how, it's a big mystery, they get tears from a unicorn, and they add a couple of tears to this batch that they're fermenting up. They fill the keg, and I Googled 1 keg of wine will bottle 26.6 bottles. So let's just say they're going to get 30 bottles out of it within the setting. And so you have this Tears of the Unicorn. Now this is so rare. It's so rare. It's going to have really, it's not going to just be a healing potion where you roll 1d6 and get a little hit point, boost. It's going to be, and maybe it could even raise the dead because it's just so rare. Maybe it gives you back all of your hit points in one shot, making it so, this is only the most elite in the world are going to have access to this. And if the player characters get access to it, it's going to be something that they're not going to want to advertise that they have, because the whole Assassin's Guild is going to be like, we got to go get that from those guys. Because this is something that's going to be so valuable, they'll be able to trade it for a barony. The king is going to have access to it. The high elves will have access to it. The elven king will have access to it. Some barons might have a bottle. You might find a bottle in the treasure hoard of a lich, of an undead lich or a dragon. It's so rare, so valuable. It's going to be incredibly powerful and desirable that the players will be able to trade it for unimaginable access to something, some unimaginable reward, or they could just use it for themselves. But you can be very creative by just saying, hey, this brew is the Tears of the Unicorn. This one is, elf blood or, whatever. So you can, by incorporating this into your world setting, you lay the foundation for the magical economy that supports this widespread ethic that game masters like to give out potions more often than anything else, because it doesn't unbalance the game. It keeps down the power creep. It keeps the players from getting too cocky, too confident, too powerful, as opposed to giving out magical swords all the time, magical rings, magical armor, boots, cloaks, whatever. Or, God forbid, even, some of the great artifacts, deck of many things, the Rod of 7 Parts, so on and so forth. Now, sure, there are going to be wizards out there and alchemists who are still brewing potions the traditional old-fashioned way. 200 gold, spending a week in their wizard's tower, and they brew up a potion of gaseous form, or one of the other minor potions. You just don't see that often. So yeah, sure, these guys are still doing that, still in the setting, but you're going to lay the foundation of these more common potions. These potions of healing are these magical mead brews that the wood elves, maybe the high elves, maybe even the dwarves. Maybe even the dwarves have a cave where they've colonized a hive of giant killer bees, and they smoke them out and they go in and they get the honey and they leave the killer bees alone, make more honey, and they're fermenting the dwarvish brew of some sort. And so you theme it after the dwarvish brewmaster, Master Vinter, who's fermenting this brew. So this, I highly recommend this change to your game world. It's a very simple thing, and it adds verisimilitude to the kind of economy that most people seem to play, where potions are the most common magic item. Where do all these potions come from? This kind of explains it, and it gives a very logical way to incorporate this magical economy. Now, stepping back into the real world, as I was researching, for this video, I thought I should check out some mead. People are still drinking it. It's still being made. And so I went to the store and I found this. And the reason why I grabbed this particular one is because it said fine print here, based on a recipe from about the year 1700. So right away, I went, that's the one, because the idea of a 300-year-old historic recipe appealed to the amateur historian in me, and I just love this. So this is Dansk Mjod, MJO with a line through it and a D. I have no familiarity with Scandinavian, so I'm murdering it, I'm sure. And it's called Viking Blood with one O for the blood. So I thought it was great. I tried it. It was tasty. I liked it. However, I did note 19% alcohol. So this is quite strong. It's got a kick. I would not serve this at the RPG table, not at all. That's kind of strong. So yeah, we tried that, but we tried that back a while back, and as I was winding up to doing this video, I says, oh, I should get another bottle. And so I went there, and they didn't have any more Viking Blood, but they had same company, but it's GI Dansk Mjod, and that GI is for ginger, because this is Nordic honey wine made with ginger and hops. Did not like it. Did not like the flavor to this at all. And I like ginger. I eat crystallized ginger candy. I like ginger in cooking. This did not appeal to me at all. The Viking Blood, that was kind of the ticket. It's got a very nice golden color to it. So that's how you would describe it in games. Very, very pale gold, see-through, transparent color to it. It's very much like a white wine. And it turned out this was actually a really nice wine to sip like in the evening. It had a nice aperitif type of flavor for after a heavy meal. And so on the real world side, it's not bad. It wasn't sickly sweet like I thought it would be. So I recommend, can't even pronounce it. I recommend it. Enjoy. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and like and bell icon. We'll have more videos coming out. Thank you. So, bonus material. We're going to try tasting this live on recording. And this is the Viking Blood. So as you can see, it's very yellow in color, slight red tint to this one, hence probably the Viking Blood name, because they are actually flavoring it with hibiscus and hops for this one. And kind of smells like a white wine. It's dry, but not as dry as I usually like in white wine. So it's we get fancy here and say, "Ooh, look at the legs on that." Not that I really know much about tasting wine. I just happen to like it. It makes a nice, after a heavy meal, you want a little aperitif. This is an excellent choice. Have particularly after dessert. Enjoy. Thanks for watching the video again. See you next time.